The Las Vegas Raiders have been full of surprises this week. First, they fired head coach Antonio Pierce on Tuesday, later than some other teams around the league. Then 2 days later on Thursday, shockingly fired general manager Tom Telesco as they search for their new head coach. These are not the only surprises though the Raiders may have up their sleeve, as they've been in contact with Super Bowl winning coach Bill Belichik, who is currently supposed to be North Carolina's head coach, but things could change. So is it even possible that he could end up being the head coach of the Raiders in 2025 with his former quarterback Tom Brady as his boss, as he's a part owner of the Raiders? Subscribe to my channel. We're on the road to 10K in 2025. You're already here. It takes 5 seconds and it's free, and it helps the channel out a lot. 63% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed. Let's get that number lower. And with that, let's see what the Raiders have been up to. The Las Vegas Raiders are one of 6 teams with a head coach opening right now in the NFL, and it came as a surprise when they fired Antonio Pierce on Tuesday, as on Monday, Antonio Pierce had this to say. When asked about his job security on Monday, Black Monday, typically the day where a lot of head coaches get fired around the NFL, Antonio Pierce said he hasn't been told anything different other than that he was expected to come back as the Raiders head coach. And then the next day, the Raiders surprisingly fired Antonio Pierce. And he was only the head coach for 1 season and led the Raiders to a 4-13 record. Not the best record in the world, not even just it's one of the worst records in the NFL. And after being fired just after 1 season with the Raiders, he joins a total of 9 coaches since 2018 to be fired after 1 season, joining Gerard Mayo, Frank Reich, Lovie Smith, Nathaniel Hackett, David Coley, Urban Meyer, Freddie Kitchens, and Steve Wilkes. Honestly, it was probably the right move for the Raiders to move on from Antonio Pierce, but to have him, do a full press conference on Monday, say he, expects to be back, and then fire him on Tuesday. Like, if you were going to fire him, you might as well have just done it Monday. But in my opinion, just from the outside looking in, non-Raiders fan looking at the Raiders, I believe that it was probably the right move to move on from Antonio Pierce. But this was not the biggest surprise of the week though for the Raiders, as they would also end up firing their general manager Tom Telesco just after 1 season with the team. And again, from the outside looking in, a non-Raiders fan looking at the Raiders, when you look at what he did in the past year or so, the resume and what he did wasn't really terrible. When it came to the draft, he got Brock Bowers, a generational tight end, had one of the best rookie seasons by a tight end, and one of the just best rookie seasons ever from Brock Bowers. He also got Jackson Powers Johnson and Domar Glaze. All of these guys were key players and contributors and starters for the Raiders this season. 3 good picks with the first 3 picks. A lot of teams miss in the first 3 rounds, and the Raiders got some good players here. Then when you look at what they did in free agency, he got Christian Wilkins, one of the best players at the time in free agency, and then he signed Gardner Minshew. That contract really wasn't the best, but the quarterback situation for the Raiders was just screwed to begin with. And when you look at free agency, probably the worst thing he did was let running back Josh Jacobs go. That's probably the biggest L he took. He's having a good year with the Green Bay Packers. I don't know if he would have had the same success with the Raiders had he not left, but hindsight 2020, letting him go was not a good move. According to this report though from Diana Rossini, from what she's been told, Telesco was fired mostly because ownership seems to prefer having the general manager and head coach more connected, like a cohesive partnership, rather than something that feels more arranged or forced. Tom Brady, the part owner, has lots of influence in Las Vegas. So based off of this, it's more so they fired him because they want more connection and same level thinking between the next head coach and general manager, as opposed to he did a bad job, which, it's a fair reason to move on from someone if you're getting a new head coach and they want to bring over a general manager or something with them. You might as well just do that. And in my opinion, by the Raiders firing Tom Telesco, the general manager, I think the Raiders gained some advantage over the other teams looking for a head coach around the NFL, because the Raiders have something to offer that those teams don't, and that is an open general manager spot. As Jordan Schultz says right here, by firing Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce, the Raiders can now sell to top coaching candidates that they will be getting a clean reset at both levels of the organization. That's something most of the other openings can't offer. You're coming here as a new head coach, you get to bring over your GM. It's a clean slate. You don't have to worry about a guy being here previously, having ties to certain players and wanting to keep certain coaches. You get to do what you want to do. And when you look at the other head coach openings around the NFL, the Chicago Bears, you got Poles. The Jacksonville Jaguars, you got Balky. With the Saints, you got Mickey Loomis. With the Jets, you got bad ownership with Woody Johnson. With the Patriots, you have ownership with the Kraft family and their involvement. With the Raiders, they gain a huge advantage here with a general manager opening and become a lot more attractive of a destination because of the firing of Tom Telesco. Now, I still don't think that the most attractive head coaching spot around the NFL, I think it still goes Patriots, and then Bears or Jacksonville, and then the Raiders. And then the Saints and Jets are on the same tier when it comes to head coach rankings, in my opinion. I honestly had the Raiders ranked with the Saints and the Jets before. Now I put them a lot higher because of the opening at the general manager position. And then you look at what the Raiders have. They have the 6th pick in this year's NFL draft. They got a decent amount of cap space to work with. Brock Bowers is a guy you can build around. You got Max Crosby, another guy you can build around. And then you have some young players like Jackson Powers and Delmar Glaze and a few other guys that you can work with to build around under Tom Brady, the part owner, who may also be a huge bonus for head coaching candidates to work with Tom Brady, a guy, who won 7 Super Bowls. Granted, though, the Raiders still do need some help. They still need a quarterback. They got Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and Desmond Ridder. Like, the quarterback situation has to be figured out. Obviously, them winning some bad games at the end of the season is going to prevent them from drafting Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward unless they end up trading up. Maybe they could sign Sam Darnold in free agency or something. But the QB situation has to be figured out. And that's something the next head coach for the Raiders is going to have to figure out when he's hired by the Raiders. And when it comes to the head coaching search, unlike the other 5 teams with head coach openings, the Raiders got started a little later than the other teams when it comes to doing homework on candidates and being an opening and requesting to do interviews. As I'm recording this, the Raiders have 6 interviews and requests set up for their head coaching job. Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, the former New York Jets head coach. I believe he has a consulting defensive role with the Packers right now. I'm not 100% sure on that. And Pete Carroll, the former Seattle Seahawks head coach. This is a solid list of names. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are guys I think you absolutely have to look into. Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, he's been a head coach before, didn't have the most success, but what he's doing with Kansas City over the past few seasons has been great. He's at least worth talking to and interviewing. Whether or not they hire him, I don't know how greatly I would feel about the Raiders hiring him as a head coach. Todd Monken of the Ravens, he's definitely a guy who should be on the radar for a lot of teams, and I think he would be a decent hire for the Raiders as well. Robert Saleh, definitely worth talking to. Pete Carroll, the former Seattle Seahawks head coach, he's a guy definitely worth talking to as well. But the big name here is obviously Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Him accepting an interview with the Raiders is a huge win for the Raiders. It was reported back in November that Ben Johnson is taking a different approach this hiring cycle as opposed to last season. He won't chase interviews. If he takes an interview with a team, it will be with the intentions of taking that job. And he has 2 criteria for the interview process: organizational alignment, in particular between the head coach and GM. Well, the GM spot is open with the Raiders, so that's a huge bonus for them, and recognition from the organization on what went wrong previously and their willingness to fix it. I can't speak on the Raiders if that's part of something that they recognize, but they know something went wrong. They fired the GM and the head coach. And I think as long as Tom Brady is a part owner, he's willing to fix it and do whatever he can to help the team win games. And Ben Johnson, due to the Lions having the first round bye week, he will be meeting with the Raiders today in the afternoon. He's also meeting with the Patriots today, and he's meeting with the Bears and Jaguars on Saturday tomorrow. Now, there's 2 names not listed on the Raiders head coaching tracker of guys who they're going to interview, and those were Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick. Yeah, you heard that right, Bill Belichick. A report came out from Tom Pelissero saying multiple NFL teams have inquired about whether legendary coach Bill Belichick would reconsider his move to college football, including the Raiders. The Raiders are the only team that he lists here whose new minority owner, Tom Brady, spoke recently with his old coach, per league sources. Bill Belichick took a job with University of North Carolina not that long ago, but he does have an out of $10 million. So if the Raiders were to hire him, it would just be a payout of $10 million. And for NFL organizations, that's really nothing. And can we just talk about how funny the power dynamic would be of Bill Belichick was basically the head coach and GM of the Patriots and told Tom Brady what to do for like 20 years. And then if this was to happen, Tom Brady would be the boss of Bill Belichick. I'm curious to see how that would go, how that power dynamic would work. Obviously, a player and coach duo would work, but how would a owner and a head coach duo work between Brady and Belichick? Would those guys off the football field be able to work together, or would there be some bashing heads? Would it really be a good situation? I mean, me personally, I would love to see Belichick on the Raiders simply for the Tom Brady aspect of his former player, Tom Brady. Belichick's former player, Tom Brady, would be his new boss as he's a minority owner of the Raiders. And then we got a conflicting report from Diana Rossini saying Bill Belichick has no plans to return to the NFL per sources. She's told his sole focus is on coaching and recruiting for North Carolina as he continues building the Tar Heels future. He's recruiting today in New Jersey. I don't know who to believe here. I don't know how factual this is. I don't know if Tom Brady talking to Bill Belichick was solely just to figure out who he would hire as head coach or get his input. If Diana Rossini is correct, then so be it. But I just don't see a scenario where Bill Belichick has no plans or no intentions of returning to the NFL. The dude is 72. I don't know how invested he's going to be with college kids or how good he's going to be at it. He wants to get the most wins in head coaching history. He's coming close to that number. And I would just be shocked if he wouldn't want to return to the NFL. He almost took the Falcons job last season. He was interviewing for other jobs. But I guess we'll find out what happens to him in the upcoming weeks, because a decision is going to have to be made about him and the Raiders head coaching job in general within the upcoming weeks or so. And as for Mike Vrabel, as of right now, there is no interview set up with him in the Raiders. The Patriots are obviously front runners to get him, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't get the Patriots job and isn't coaching the Patriots. But he has some ties to the Raiders like Tom Brady. But I really don't see that being the case, but at least do an interview with Mike Vrabel, as he's probably the hottest or the second hottest name in this head coaching cycle. Let me know who you think the Raiders are going to hire as their next head coach down in the comments below. I appreciate it if you made it this far. Subscribe to my channel, Cash Sports, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one. Peace.